Mojiba, Ibae. I pay homage to all the gurus and great realizers from time immemorial. Imhotep, Osiris, Buddha, Muhammad, peace be upon him, Christ, Babuji Maharaj, Charan Singh Ji Maharaj, Bhagwan Ra Afrika, libations. Igun Mojiba, Ibae. I pay homage to my spiritual ancestors who were great realizers, who left their spiritual DNA, their legacy of love, their Dharma wisdom, that we may realize their spiritual condition in this very lifetime. Libations. Sangha Mojiba, Ibae. I pay homage to all the great spiritual communities and sanghas from time immemorial, who preserve the Dharma and the teachings, who worked in the spirit of great cooperation and reciprocity, who modeled the behavior of a spiritual community and the way of karma, so that we too may become a great sangha. Libations. Sadguru Mojiba, Ibae. On behalf of my spiritual brothers and sisters and my spiritual community, I honor my own living son, Sadguru, who loves me, who continues to sacrifice for me each and every moment, so that I and we all may too realize his spiritual condition in this very lifetime, not for our sakes, but for the sakes of all sentient beings. Libations.
particular Shabbat by Aretha G. reminds you that in the whole of this creation, the only friend that any of us have is the Lord. And that the Lord has been our bridge over which we have crossed through so many of the crises we have individually faced in our life and living. That the Lord was the real force in that human being that might have stopped and gave you a jump on the road late at night when your car has stalled. That it was the Lord in one of his myriad forms, perhaps, that had rushed into a burning building and brought you to safety and so forth and so on. And very often we tend to thank the vehicle of the Lord, but forget that it is the Lord itself that is constantly bestowing its daya and mahar, its grace and mercy on each and every one of us, you see. Therefore, saints say that on a daily basis you should set aside a little time, ponder, ruminate, cogitate on the great good fortune that you are daily showered with by the Lord. I don't know if you ever thought about it, but if you simply stand back and look at this world that we are in, this universe that we are in, and you can see that on a daily basis all kinds of calamities, disasters are occurring. Is that about right? The world is full of wars and crime and violence on all kinds of scales, small and large. And the saints and mystics say that seeing all of this calamity going on around you, all this chaos, death, destruction, sickness, illness, you should really try to realize that at any given moment, anything can happen to you. Please make a note of that. On any given Sunday, or Monday, or Tuesday, in any given moment, anything can happen to you. I mean, anything. And you should really ponder that. You should really try to understand that, because look where you are at. You're in Pinda. And this is not Disney World. This is not Utopia. Everyone and everything that comes into this realm is destroyed. Everybody gets killed down here. All kinds of things happens in this realm of Pinda. And in any given moment, I mean any given moment, anything can happen to you. The possibilities are infinite. And the same is the case with your loved ones, your children, your husbands, your wives, your mothers, your fathers. In any given moment, anything can happen to you. All of the bad things that you fear so much and that you're expending so much effort to protect yourself from can happen just like that, in spite of your best effort to protect you. You should ponder that. We are all existing moment by moment as a sheer act of daya and maher. Grace and mercy. You are existing in this moment because you are enjoying the sarand, the protection of the Supreme Being, the Lord itself. Otherwise, anything can happen to you. So when you watch the news and you see the tsunami, or you see some horrible event, you see someone being murdered, so forth and so on. In those moments when you see all of this going on around you, it should remind you in that moment that just like the person in the news clip, it could have happened to you. You could have got raped. You could have got murdered. You could have been stabbed 500 times. You could have been washed out in a tsunami. There is nothing special about you. Is it? And in those moments, we should pause, and we should truly experience the heart full of gratitude. You could have lost your house. You could have been bankrupt. It could have been your job that shut down and took all your pension money. Couldn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this very simple practice of observing your condition, observing this place that you're in. If you will simply observe the reality of Pinda, understanding that in any given moment, anything can happen to you. If you will truly recognize and observe this, your response to such a revelation cannot be anything other than gratitude and appreciation of the Lord. You don't have to read a lot of books to try to generate devotion. Something wrong with that picture, isn't it? No Gita, no Quran, no Bible, no Dhammapada, you see? No Zenavesta, no Upanishads, no Vedas are required except for people who are absolutely stupid. People who are absolutely blind. Yes, then for them, a Vedas is necessary, a Quran is necessary, you see. The Upanishads become necessary. A lot of studying and philosophizing become necessary. But for those who have eyes and can see, as Jesus says, the grace and mercy of the Lord is perfectly obvious. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You don't have to read a poem to get filled with love and devotion for the Lord if you can simply see what is going on around you. Be that as it may, if you are without the collyrium that allows you to see what is perfectly obvious, then of course it's all right to take the help of these scriptures, these kind of talks, you see, so forth and so on. Because they will help you to arrive at the right attitude that should underlie and serve as the basis of the mindset necessary to really engage abhyasa and spiritual practice. You cannot become a religious or spiritual person without this recognition. It is fundamental. You see. So here we are sitting here today, under the saran of the Supreme Lord, given an opportunity to get our act together. But you could have just as well been wiped out. So recognizing that, we should appreciate this few minutes that we have together today, knowing that it has been given to us by grace. Many people on their way to their respective houses of worship today got wiped out on some highway. They might have went into a convenience store to stop to get a cup of coffee and got their brains blown out. I mean, you can easily imagine all the possibilities, can't you?
Yes, sir.
So this recognition of the reality of the Saran of the Lord and the fact that we are enjoying its protection is simply prerequisite for any authentic practice of anything related to true religion, true spirituality. Such a recognition also generates in you the requisite humility. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
The insight, the recognition contains a whole plethora of qualities that are befitting of a true parmati that you're trying to generate by reading books and engaging in endless debates with one another about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. But if you simply look, you will be humbled. You need not depend upon all of these psychological tricks that you resort to for the sake of cultivating humility in yourself. Humility is simply born of seeing things the way things really are. You know that with your little intellect and your little body and your little power, you know you're not the source of the protection against the infinite possibilities of bad things that can happen to you. Don't you know that? I mean, seriously, don't you know that?
Yes, sir.
And you should get humble. That's the appropriate response to the recognition of being the beneficiary of Saran. You get humbled. And some of you rascals, Kula group, I was really quite surprised by some of the processing of one of the sutras that talks about how one responds in the face of that which is great. Well, some of you, to your credit, was able to see how it's just almost natural to respond meekly when you are in the presence of someone that you consider to be superior to you in some shape, form, or fashion. You won't have to go into that argument. You went into it in the Kula groups. But if you can understand that, then don't you understand you're always in the presence of the Supreme Being? Is that about right?
That's right.
Is there ever a moment when you're not in the presence? That is why they say that true devotees are meek and humble all the time. Because they are always focused in their attention on the presence of the Lord. This is the mark of a lover of the Lord, their humility. Well, what other way could you be? That's not practice. You don't have to watch your speech to make sure that you don't speak in a way that violates your concept of what it means to be humble. That's all tricknology. You follow what I'm saying? That's not genuine. That's not based on any heart. That's not based on any recognition. That's mechanical. That's mind-based. Because tomorrow you have a different set of premises that you're trying to engage for the sake of cultivating humility in yourself. It doesn't work like that. And if one claims to possess this kind of recognition of the always and already presence of the Supreme Being, if one claims that one enjoys such a recognition, and yet that recognition does not correct your behavior, then how are you to be taken seriously? And your claims that you have some recognition. Are you following my argument?
Yes, sir.
In fact, how can you even be taken seriously that you even believe in a God? You say you believe in God, right? Where is the proof? When there is no correction and mending and movement toward more and more meekness, humbleness in your behavior, then it can be easily concluded that you really don't believe in God. You just say you believe in God. You're just mouthing something that you've heard other people say, but the behavior demonstrates you don't believe no God exists. So when we do these libations and people who do these kind of things, you see, it's easy to run through the scripture. You follow what I'm saying? And then it just becomes a meaningless ritual. You follow what I'm saying? Ceremony. Churches are full of it. Mosques are full of it. Temples are full of it. And the ceremony lose all meaning and significance. But it must be understood that you take refuge in the Lord. That's what surrender means. Surrender is not some kind of pseudo gesture that you engage in for the sake of projecting to others your humility. That's not the purpose of surrender. No, it's surrender the result of defeat and helplessness. Surrender is based on a profound recognition that at all times and under all circumstances and situations, everywhere you move in this creation, if it wasn't the fact that you were enjoying the saran of Sapurush, of the Supreme Being, of the Lord itself, anything could happen to you.
Amen.
To wipe you out just like that. And when you see that this is always the case, there's never a time when you are not enjoying this experience called life outside of the salon of the Supreme Being. When you understand this is not, you see, on Monday but not Tuesday. On Tuesday you're in charge and then God takes over Wednesday. No, it's not like that. The saran is uninterrupted and continuous. If it wasn't, anything will happen to you and can happen to you. Now when you recognize this, there's even a deeper revelation. It liberates you from worry. You're worrying because you think you are at some level involved in your own protection. That's why you're worried. Am I doing the right thing? Do I have a good enough strategy? Should I buy an extra lock for my door? So forth and so on. I'm not minimizing all of these precautions, but there must be the underlying realization of the real source of your protection. devotees, you see, learn, therefore, how to live in the maj, the will, the hukam of this supreme being. There's no need to worry, because they understand, what am I worried for? Because if I have Saran is going to take care of business, right?
Yes, sir.
So your mind is free to not worry. Interesting. If you really truly have had the recognition, what is there to worry about? Your mind is free of worry. Your attention is free of this burden of self-concern and what you got to do to protect yourself. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You simply have seen that you're always being protected as long as you're breathing in the moment. You become moska, free, liberated, saved, so forth and so on, from all of the ordeal of anxiety, fear, worry, so forth and so on, about your well-being. You become carefree, not careless. Please make a note. Sometimes people confuse being carefree with being careless. I'm not talking about becoming careless, but carefree. That's born of the recognition. So I thought I would preface our gathering today just to remind you, as you move about through the day, to pause, take a few minutes, doesn't take long. Look around you. See all of what's really going on in this world. Take a good look at it. Ponder it, you see? See what's going on. See how many millions of animals are just being slaughtered. You see? See the thousands of children that are just being raped, murdered. See what's going on here. Get your head out your ass and see what's going on. And truly understand anything, any of those same horrors that you are observing in the world, any of those can happen to you. Any minute, in any given moment, in any given place. Save for your being under the sarand of the Supreme Lord. Now I've had my say. If there's something you would like to discuss, you're most welcome. Yes, beloved.
Where does karma fit into what you just spoke about?
The events that actually occur in your life are those events that are the outcome of your own actions, your own desires. And so understanding that, you can't really blame any of the so-called negative things that happen to you on other people. When you really profoundly understand karma, how it works and all of that, then to that same degree of understanding, there is the diminishment of your experience of being a victim of other people, circumstances. There's even a more profound revelation if you are really truly able to have the experience of your karma. If you really are able to get in touch with and really experience the kind of karma you've been creating, all the things that you have done that logically requires you to undergo some negative experience. If you could just see all of the sin and negative actions and the consequences that you must undergo as a result of those actions, you see, you will flee to the feet of the Lord. You follow me? And seek its solid and protection. You will want to be rescued from your own past actions that you have committed that required you to suffer. To have one of the events that we are so frightened by occur to you. So much can be said about karma. It simply depends on the context of the discussion of the theory or the reality, for that matter, of karma. But as it pertains to this matter, you see, if you know you have a lot of stuff that you've done in the past, and understand the law of karma that you're going to have to reap that. And again, the only protection that you have, even from your karma, is who? The Lord. There is no other protection from your karma at all. So those who are keen about protecting themselves from the consequences of all their negative past actions should therefore seek the protection of the Supreme Being. Where those consequences can be pardoned, transcended. Something else to say about it, beloved?
Coming from, well, I haven't been involved in it for years, but from a Baptist or prayer type of background, I've lately been on a different path in the form of meditation, things of that nature. And with what you just said, in going to the Supreme Being, how do you balance out, not outwardly, looking to God and then meditating at the same time to get in touch with your higher self and connect with God that way?
Well, sometimes it's a combination of both, you see. It varies and it depends on each individual. But you're right, there is a distinction between quote-unquote prayer and meditation. Even within prayer, there's different levels and types of prayer. There are prayers that are full of petition, and those are usually the lowest kinds of prayer. Then there are prayers of praise. There's prayers of gratitude, and so forth and so on. So there's different levels of prayer in itself. But most people, particularly those whose prayer is still at the level of petitioning the Lord for sadhan, right, is a means of giving themselves some relief. Sometimes you see, when one is overwhelmed, one realizes that the forces are too great. It prays to the Lord. Everybody does it in a crisis. Everybody does it. When you really get against that wall, there's something in you that makes you want to reach out and cry for help. You follow what I'm saying? You know you need some protection. And prayer very often gives us some relief from all of the fear and anxiety that is associated with our experience of some crisis, you see? Because it gives us the feeling that God is going to get me out of this if I can just hold on. I mean, it gives you some hope. And sometimes that's very necessary to keep you from blowing your brains out. So it has its place and it has its value. Whereas meditation is not so much a kind of petition and so forth and so on. Meditation is more like making contact with God. And that's a whole different matter. At some level of one's spiritual growth and development, you see, beloved, that kind of petitionary prayer drops out and is replaced by depending entirely upon the knowledge of the Supreme Being with the understanding your will is what's best for me. There simply is no more doubt about it. You follow what I'm saying? There's no more concern about what's going to happen to me at all. Because whatever happens to me, you see, whether I have to undergo the karma, fine. If that's your will, then that's what's good for me. Mirabai, the Sufi female mystics, somewhere in some of her rubaiyats, or sutras, says that doesn't matter whether you keep me in hell or send me to heaven, or it really doesn't matter what my circumstances are in this world at all. My only request, you see, is that you don't take my love of you away. But there's a complete indifference to that kind of matter. Then you enjoy a deeper insight as well, beloved. I mean, there's many layers, and we won't go on, but I would defer you to a talk that I asked Bharataji to give to the Sangha a few weeks ago, a month ago. I've lost track of time. It's about learning how and developing the level of discrimination to discern the hidden good and even these so-called crises that are making you run and pray. You're running and praying because you don't see the hidden good in it. And I shared with Bharataji in a private one-on-one conversation some of the deeper meanings of all of that. Of course, he was only able to share a little bit of it with you, rascals. Perhaps you all will prevail upon him next time his turn come around and demand more. I certainly gave him more than he gave you. I see he's cheap in addition to many other faults. He's cheap. I didn't hear that in any of your letters. Time, that's right. If you all give him more time, he'll give you more. But the point is that in those insights I shared with Bharataji is contained the solution to a lot of the anxiety and fear that tends to motivate you to resort to that level of prayer that is petitionary and almost in some extent insulting, as if the Lord don't know what's best for you, as if the Lord needs your counsel. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, there's almost a kind of arrogance about it. Here you are with a thimbleful of intelligence trying to, right, make suggestion to the supreme intelligence of all intelligence, right? An intelligence that can put together this galaxy and run it, your body. You're trying to give it some suggestions. It's also a kind of demonstration of lack of faith. Did you ever have any doubt that the Lord is taking care of you? Prayer very often is a reflection of your doubt, your lack of faith. It's really interesting. There's many ways to interpret it, you see. It could be a lack of faith. A sign that you got some doubt that the Lord would take care of you. You follow me? But if you have this ability to discern the hidden good in all of the kinds of things that is happening to you that you are normally labeling bad, then you won't be moved so frequently to engage in that kind of low-class level of prayer. You know what I mean? You may pray at a higher level then. It may be pray, thank you, God, for breaking my leg and getting me fired. Because they will look into that situation, right? And find the hidden good. You see? Swamiji Maharaj and so many saints and mystics have said so much about that. And Maharaj Sahib, one of the succeeding gurus in Agra, focused a lot of his bhashans and satsang simply on helping the Sangha cultivate that level of discrimination. And I shared some of that with Bharataji for the sake of him sharing it with you all. And he's promised now today that he will give you all the rest of it. But that is a kind of awareness that you must cultivate. Because when you can find the hidden good in the so-called bad things that happen to you, when you have developed that eye of Heru, that third eye, where you can really see now and find the grace right in the midst of the calamity. When you can do that, you save yourself from all of those negative emotional and psychological reactions to the event. You spare yourself depression. You spare yourself all of the other kinds of negative emotions and psychological response that is associated with ignorance of the hidden good. You won't even get angry. You won't get angry nearly as much anymore. How can you get angry? You see, when you have found the hidden good. You can't. Who would be angry about that? Nobody. So you must simply develop the capacity to see beyond the surface of your experiences. Find that hidden good. And then you won't feel the need so much to try to tell God how to do his job. Something else to say about it, beloved? So you can see Bilal, he hooked you up with that tape, or somebody's got it. Anything else you rascals want to discuss? Yes, beloved.
May I just please stand for a minute?
Yes.
To say I am infinitely grateful to be before you this day again, and to be among my tribal spiritual sisters and brothers. It's been a long time since they've been. Let me say this as I explained to
Just a
you.
little louder, Amy.
So I explained to you on the telephone 2 weeks ago that I wanted to come back to see you. I'm so glad that you invited me back. So I was explaining to you that since I left the group, in my own terminology, I said I have been to hell and back. I know what dying spiritually is all about. I have not achieved the resurrection that I'm looking intellect had ingested a foreign, distorted view of the world, and it had nothing to do with my own tribal self. And so, finally, when I kind of beat that ego down a little bit, and then I had to face those 5 perversions: attachment, greed, pride, all the rest of it. And I can tell you not only that I was on my knees, but for days. I did this for 30 days. I was on my knees and while on the floor, I hated to see daylight come and I hated to see night. Because of all of these ego things that I had learned, thinking that was the way to go. They all was pulling away from me or hanging on to me. If there's anything that I know now more than I know anything else, and that is that saying, many are called, but few are chosen. Because you have to empty, in my opinion, you have to empty yourself of all of this foreign stuff that we have learned out here in the world. And that was difficult for me to do because I was relying on that intellectualism for my own self-image. Lastly, let me say this. I know where I want to go, and I did not choose this path for myself. But if one thing I do know, I cannot go back. But I will be looking for a brother like yourself to help me move in the right direction. And I thank you.
You're very welcome. Saab, you see there's nothing to add to your confession. Your experience is the sign of grace. Surely, had it not been for grace, you would have perished following the dictates of your mind, thinking that the little knowledge you had picked up via reading books and so forth and so on was somehow equal to the wisdom of the gurus. So much so that you presume to guru yourself. But you were fortunate. You're still here. And you were humbled by the experiences you shared with me by phone that night. And even have demonstrated today to some degree for the sake of the Sanghat. So this is grace. Not to worry about it. Welcome home. That's all I have to say. Welcome home. And you and I can talk again later. Something else to say? You see, this mind we don't understand. This, your mind, your intellect, all your knowledge, all that is a part of the Kalpurush, the negative force. Your mind, your intellect, and all of that are feathers placed upon you. They're bindings. They're like the chains used to hold slaves. You follow me? The whole function of your mind and intellect is to keep you deluded. That's its function. That is that attribute of the Kalpurush in you. Now, some people have stronger attributes of Kal. So naturally, they'll be more attached to those attributes. My intellect, and I'm glad you said intellect and not intelligence, because they're entirely two different phenomena. People can have sharp intellect. That doesn't mean you're intelligent at all. It just means you have good memory skills, blah, 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 blah. The danger is that you will begin to think because of your good intellect that you are intelligence. And this is the problem. And one needs to go through that experience, you see. You see, Eddie Saab, that could have happened to you on your deathbed. You could have had that realization in that room, but you could have been on your last leg. Then surely you would have been full of grief. But what you found is that this intellect is no contest for the forces of lust, greed, anger, attachment, and all of those other things, you see. That all of those hidden desires and tendencies and so forth can be dealt with. This happens almost always whenever a person becomes isolated, if you will. Solitary confinement, things of that nature. Most people lose their mind in those situations, you see, because they're confronted now. And intellect goes right out the door. I'm not anti-intellect. Don't misunderstand me. It has its function, use, and so forth. But intellect is fundamentally an instrument given to our souls to use for the sake of functioning in this world. It has nothing to do with the world beyond here. The intellect is a faculty shaped for dealing in this world. You see? Figuring out, how not to walk into doors, out into traffic, that kind of thing. So it's useful, I mean, if you don't have a good intellect, you sort of get hit by a car, any damn thing, you see. So you need intellect, but you need intellect fundamentally to function in Pinda, and not even in the high levels of Pinda, just at the regular old gross level of Pinda. So it's useful. But it is not the faculty of transport. The intellect is not that faculty in consciousness that transports you to higher levels of consciousness. It's not the intellect at all. It's just good for paying taxes. So much can be said about it, you see. What else would you rascal like to discuss? Yes, beloved?
In referring to the sutra where you were saying, talking about being meek to superiors and polite to inferiors and affectionate to equals, given the fact that everything that happens for a reason, and it's all, from the Lord, wouldn't it stand a reason to just be meek to everybody and everything?
Sure.
Just...
If you can make such spiritual growth, that's
the goal.
theoretical. You see, that sutra is a very practical sutra, because people can't start and travel the path from where you want to be. You must start this path from where you are. And you mustn't get too caught up in idealism. Some people are over-idealistic. Follow me? And yes, those are lofty goals. Sure, that's where we should go. But how would you get to there, you see, unless you start from where you're at? Now, the reality, beloved, is that the ego self is always, at all time, looking upon many of the people they interact as either being inferior, equal, or greater than them. I mean, it's just what you're doing all the time. So the saints say that since you're doing this all the time, let me show you how to do it right. So that you do not keep creating negative karma for yourself. Right? It's a correction of your behavior in such a way that it's in your best spiritual interest. It's what you need to do right now to get from where you at a little closer to that point that you just articulated, where you can, you see. Now let me first point out that when you're able to respond to everybody as being me, it's because you're not seeing everybody anymore as being other than the Lord itself. Namaste has matured in your case. You follow me? When you can look upon every other person that you come in contact with, and rather than seeing their personalities and blah, 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 and you're able to see the divine in them, the surit. When you're able to enjoy that kind of seeing, then automatically your response to them will be the same as that to God, because that's all you're seeing. But barring that, you're back from an ego point of perspective, right? So when you see people, that's exactly what you're seeing. And then you are responding to that. And you are categorizing that individual. We do it for events, circumstances, situation, people, places, things. You have no option. That's what you're doing. So you meet a person and you feel that this person is inferior, or something they're doing is inferior, or so forth and so on, right? Your normal response, and your pre-corrected condition is that you abuse that person. You condemn that person. That's what you do when you confront people who are in some sense, shape, form, or fashion considered to be inferior to you. Morally inferior, ethically inferior, and so forth. You abuse because that's what the mind loves doing. The mind is a violent thing. The mind likes that. Carl likes that. And your mind is made in the image of Carl. Carl enjoys violence. And so do you. So when you have an opportunity to abuse someone that is inferior to you, to ridicule them, you enjoy that. You relish that. You follow what I'm saying? In this world, the strong like abusing the weak. They love it. They get great joy out of that. Now that's how we are normally operating in our pre-corrected condition. Are you following me, beloved? Do that make sense to you? And so the saints said, don't do that. You know what I mean? Because you're just going to create some more real negative stuff that's bound to happen for you. You're going to create some enemies, and enemies will take revenge sooner or later. And then you got more trouble. It's a vicious cycle. The saints say that, okay, we must learn how to correct our behavior, you see, and where we are interacting with a person, place, situation, thing, et cetera, that we feel is inferior to us, then the appropriate way to interact in that relationship is to be polite. Now, you all just did your Carlton Sunday, right? Black Sunday? You remember Black Sunday, right? You got some feedback on how you tend to react, right? To the people that you feel are inferior to you in some shape, form, or fashion. That their level of conduct is inferior to mine. From a Pamarthi point of view. But it's the same principle if it's even from a worldly point of view. So when you encounter a brother or sister whom you look upon as being inferior to you in terms of your conduct as a Pamarthi versus their conduct as a Pamarthi, your tendency is to abuse them, criticize, condemn. because you enjoy it. It's really that simple. You don't have to pull out a long book and turn pages and try to figure out the psychoanalytical origin of the behavior and how were they related to potty training and getting beat up on the playground in school. No. That's just the call attribute in you. That's what call and you like. You like doing that. You get satisfaction out of that. It makes you feel powerful. You see? And it's intoxicating. It makes you feel powerful. You see? To dominate someone weaker than you. It makes you feel powerful. That's why you do it. Not much more can be said about it. But the saints say, give up this power trip. Give up all of that. Just be polite. When you are interacting with someone whom you feel to be equal to you, then the saints say then the right response is one of affection. Embracing. Affectionate toward those whom you feel are your equals. Well, how do you respond to those who you feel are your equals? Your response is competition, because you don't want them to be equal to you. So it becomes competitive. You see, competitive. Now it gets competitive, right? You may find someone who is equal to you in intellect. You follow what I'm saying? Now there's a disagreement. Before then you were getting along just fine until that disagreement occurred. Then you see that power urge swing right in, right? And y'all ready to fight. Dominate, competitive, rather than to be affectionate toward those who are equal to you. I'm not going to be able to unpack all of it. That's what you all have the cooler meeting for. And then, of course, there's the individual that you feel from your point of view, right? We're not talking about the absolute. We're not talking about anything objective here. This is all subjective. You follow me? You will meet those who you feel are superior. Whether they're superior or not is not the point. You feel they're superior. When the saints say the right thing to do there is to be meek, humbled. You follow me? Receptive is another way of saying it. If this person knows more than me, why shouldn't I get receptive and learn? It's foolish of me to not to do otherwise, isn't it? But in your normal condition, the typical response to those who are superior to you is that you rebel against such superiority, because you are at some point very adolescents. The superior person represents some kind of authority figure to you, and you're still adolescent, so you rebel against that, right? You relativize the situation, right? I mean, you don't care if this guy got 5 medical degrees in the area where you are experiencing some illness. You discount him. You know what I mean? So what? He's a specialist. So damn what? I read a book on herbs. You see? So you elevate your knowledge of medicine, you know what I mean, to some kind of superior level. Now you reduce the superior to your equal. You follow what I'm saying? You reduce him to your equal. And if he really is a threat, you reduce him to your inferior. And then you're abusing that goddamn doctor don't know a goddamn thing. You see my point? But I give you your power surge. See, it's always about that. You see. So the saints say, well, let's just, start slowly. It's not something you would do overnight, because, we have these habits and so forth and so on. But to the best of your ability, try to understand that. And start mending and correcting your response to others, you see? That's developing in the culture of psychology and psychiatrists. We understand that, now I'm just speaking from a purely psychosocial point of view, that man tends to operate out of different lines of intelligence, you see? It's about 24 of them, and one of the major ones is the interpersonal line of intelligence, this ability to interact with other human beings in a way that it reduces conflict. So you can see that it requires some development along that line of interpersonal intelligence to correct the behavior in the manner that the mystics are talking about. The behaviors and corrections to be made in our behavior by these mystics takes all 24 lines of intelligence to its highest stages, right? Which now enable you to function in this world, even at the human level, in an entirely different level. So with your interpersonal level of intelligence elevated, corrected, mended, you see, by practicing being polite, affectionate, and meek, and so forth and so on, you reduce the conflict you have with other people. You see, you get along better with other people. Other people get along better with you, right? If you got 5 or 6 or 7 letters, then you know you're probably somewhere down there on that line within the context of who you're interacting with here in the house. Something else to say about it?
I'd like to comment. It seems that correction is the key. I mean, it's like you gotta first realize that the negative emotion has arose before you can then proceed to correct. Because otherwise, you just feeling good and, you know, and you feeling powerful and you just want to let that go on.
That's right, you become addicted to it. And that's why I said that that's usually the situation. We are addicted to it. We're patterned, conditioned, habituated, addicted to that kind of thing, you see? You're looking for the weak people to prey on. That's what you do. You scan any community, any place that you're at, you scan and you try to seek out the weak. People that are weaker than you, because those are the ones you want to hang out with, because you can dominate. You follow me? You can dominate. You see? That's what you do. That's what the mind does. The mind is a violent phenomenon. By design, that's what it's supposed to. It is violent. How you think all the violence gets in the world if it didn't come out of violent minds? Are you understanding me?
Yes, sir.
The violence in this level of creation just didn't, drop down out of the clouds. It comes out of minds, out of violent minds. That's how you get your food. It's a kind of food for the mind. When you abuse somebody, you feel good. Told that so-and-so and so-and-so off. You know what I mean? You feel good. You know that. Y'all know I'm telling the truth. Don't pretend like I'm talking about something that is way foreign to your experience. Be hunting for weak people, you know what I mean? Give you a chance to get your power rush on. That's what the mind does. That's its food. So you're always adjusting superior people down to a level to be inferior to you for the sake of getting your food on. I mean, that's just a classical adolescence response when faced with real greatness. And like you say, beloved, you first have to see it. And if you can't see it, then you must be helped to see it. And that's the whole function of a Sangha. See, that's the beauty of a Sangha. The Sangha, we help one another see that which we otherwise could not see. That's the value of the Guru. You see, via the Guru's discourses and bhashans, he helps us to see what we otherwise would never see. And if you don't see it, how would you, as you put it, correct it? You simply won't. You haven't corrected it. Not just in this lifetime. I mean, in millions of lifetimes, you haven't corrected it, you see. Hence the value of the company of the Sadhu or Saint Satguru, you see? Where else can you get any correction? Can't get it from Kusan. Can you? No. And in fact, your worldly company is reinforcing the problem. You have to understand those desires that are rising in your mind is usually the same kind of desire that is rising in the minds of the people you're keeping company with. Your desires are not just happening arbitrarily and haphazardly. Therein lies the caution that the mystics give us. Minimize that interaction with worldly people because you will absorb the same kind of desires that they have. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. And their desires are anti-Paramatma. They will act, that's actually what will happen through osmosis. There is no defense against it. It's osmosis. It's like a virus. It goes from one mind to the next mind. So you can't get a steel helmet and put it on your head and say, I'm going to go visit my friends at the, you know what I mean, pool hall. It don't work like that. You see, no leg will protect you. Enter into that company, your mind will be filled with the desires that are dominating that environment. And your mind will be, those desires will rise up in you. And see, if you don't have the understanding or the motivation to inspect and check your desires, if you're not looking at the desires that are actually arising in your mind, but just giving yourself over to them willy-nilly, you see, you're in some serious trouble. Because once that desire arises in your mind, you see, then you're going to want to fulfill that desire. And anything and anyone that obstructs the fulfillment of that desire that has arisen in your mind, you will get angry. That's how the process works, right? Calm, desire, then growth, then anger. And you all know the rest of the cycle. I don't want to burden you with all of that, but you understand what I'm talking about? So you can't get involved in that. Then when you fulfill one of the desire, you will tend to fulfill every desire that is connected with it. You haven't done it yet, but you will. It's just a matter of time. Because that's the direction of your attention. The current of your soot, your attention is gone there. And unless you reverse the current of your attention, there it is. So you must be very careful about the company you keep. And the same principle applies in the company of the devotees, Paramatmas. Keep the company of the holy men and women, and you will have automatically the desire to become God realized. Automatically. And by the same process. Because the desires in the hearts and minds of the devotees of the Lord would invade your mind. And you will be transformed. I mean, it's just like that. That's why the mystics say, keep the company of those who are devoted to Paramatma. And automatically you will start developing those same desires. It may be more dramatic in one person's case than the other, but there's no way to avoid that. Those are the seeds that the mystic talks about. They get planted in the hearts and mind of those who attend satsang. And I've just pointed out to you, well, it's the same as the case with those who attend kusang. There's no different in the principles here. When you go attend kusang, if you attend more kusang than satsang, then guess what's going to characterize most of your interests and desires? It will be the desires that you have inherited from your kusang. That's how it goes, folks. It's the desires. So you have to, there's a lot of things you have to look at. You have to, first, as you say, beloved, first you have to be, at some level, serious about the care of your soul. What the Christian mystics call this kura anamaram, the care of your soul. You got to be concerned about that. The care of your mind. You must want to protect your mind from all of this kind of stuff, right? And that's a heart thing, you see. One of the most beautiful things that I must tell you that I love coming in and through the cooler meetings that you all have been engaged in. And what I was hearing, it was just, for me, like hearing Chubbit, ringing in Sachkan. Because I heard in some of you, you have begun to understand this argument with your heart. And you really don't want to be like that I didn't have to pick up a phone and say, okay, don't be like that no more. You see? Some of you heart opened, and you really saw this, and you really felt it. I don't want to be like this no more. You know? And that's a sign, not only of grace, but of your sincerity. You don't want to be like this. You don't want to be impolite where you should be being polite. You don't want to be competitive and all of that where you should be affectionate. And you don't want to be arrogant where you should be meek. You don't want that no more. You follow what I'm saying? You don't want to prey on the weak anymore, simply for the sake of getting your rush of power. You follow me? The craving now is to really become a first-class human being. No fooling. No kidding. You see, you're through with this career of putting others down. You follow what I'm saying? Finding faults with everybody except who? Naturally. Publicizing other people's faults and imperfection. You know, getting on the radio and announcing it. You know what I mean? Publicizing it. You threw it all. A few of you, enough of you. You know, it don't have to be all of you. You see, just enough of you. That 20%, right? I'm getting closer to that 20%. And when that magic number hits, the rest are pulled along through osmosis. Because the power of the 20% will pull the rest if they just stay in the room. You follow me? Just stay in the room. The work will get done. But I am happy to see that you all have engaged in these past considerations. I know I've been putting you all through a lot, and you all been meeting, some of you every week, and spending 3 or 4 hours, and I want to let you know I really appreciate your dedication and commitment to serving one another, you see. So my heart was touched by your heart. And I'm really pleased to see the birth of those who understand this Dharma with their hearts now. It's not very important if you understand it with your head. It has its place. But that's just theory. Maharaji, all saints said that a ton of spiritual theory is not worth an ounce of practice. An ounce. What good is having all this gyan and all this theoretical knowledge and the ability to quote all of this? You can't do no practice. You can't do no sadhana. You can't correct your behavior. All this knowledge that you've been accumulating is of no value whatsoever. It's a problem, in fact. You see? It's about opening up your heart. It's about transcending that part of your body-mind that still is dominated by the animal in you. Get all that brute thing out of you. You see, like with our dietary practices, you see, you all meet people that say, well, I can't live without eating meat. They're telling you the truth. Because that is a brute human, half animal, napasu, as they refer to them. Just like a lion needs some meat, well, this person that is still operating out of lower 3 chakra, this person really needs to eat them some meat. They're half humans and half human. Animals, they're brute. You see? You see in the ancient Sphinx in Egypt, the Narsim, the half man, half lion, it's a symbol of that period of time. That's when that culture arrived. And they were, you see, man had just begun to emerge out of the state of being an animal, halfway. Hadn't made it all the way, but halfway up. I mean, that's great mysteries there, you see. So just as they have to follow all of those kind of things, well, there's that animal part of you, that brute part that enjoys dominating, that's what that is. That's the same part of you that can't give up meat. Same part of you can't give up drugs. That's the same part of you that can't be polite. Make a note. It's the same part, the same deficit. You follow me? So it's not that we have to condemn one another about it, but you must understand that. And then the desire will arise, right? Well, you want to be more than a human, half animal, don't you? Don't you want to become more than that? Go for it. You know what I mean? Go for it. Go for your full human potential. Go for it. But the heart must be broke, wide open, with tenderness. Because you see, it takes a little tenderness to practice that level of correction. There must be some tenderness in you if you're going to be polite to those who you feel to be inferior. You know, you're responding out of a kind of tenderness here, right? And if your heart is hard and it has not been broken, you see, then you can't do that kind of thing, right? So part of the work here that I try to do with you see, subtly sometimes not so subtle, is to break your hearts. I can give you plenty of information, but that's not going to help you. I'm here to break your hearts. Wide open. Tenderize you. So I resort to all kinds of things toward that end, you see, but that's the fundamental purpose. Right? You must become broken-hearted, tender, wounded at the level of your heart. Maharaji All Saints say that without such tenderness, you can do no abhyasa at all. You can't travel the spiritual path without having a tender heart. You just can't do it. You'll want to do it. You'll try to do it, but you simply won't be able to do it. The heart must be made tender, broken, opened, receptive, empathetic, polite, affectionate, humble. These are the qualities that must ultimately become operating in our psychology, must become operable, functional, and not just dormant, not just potential, not idealistic. You follow what I'm saying? You can spend a lot of time talking about what you should be, but come on. If you've been talking about what you should be for 20 years, can I take you seriously? I mean, how can you be taken seriously? Eddie Saab, you had a comment before you lose it? Or did I take?
And Aladasa.
And Aladasa.
It's just wonderful to hear your wisdom. You know, my intuition has said to me that it's not in the thing itself, it is the way you look at it. You know, it's been said also, and I confirm from my experience, that when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at also changes. I think that what we all need to know, human beings need to know, is the process, the internal process of the thought once they have thought that thought. To see that internal process of that thought, it can go out once that whatever my thought is about this person in front of me, that thought goes out into the universe. And when that thought comes back to me, it can come back to me in a mirror of another person or an experience. But it's been my experience, since I am not conscious of the fact of what I think, when that reflection comes back to me, that which I have put out there, I don't recognize it, and I blame the person.
Absolutely. You start thinking you're a victim, but you have no idea about the etiology of your experience, the causal direction of your experience in its relationship to your thought. You can't know, because you are only aware at the very surface. The tip of an iceberg is not representative of the whole mountain of ice lying underneath it, you see? And so you're right. very often, you see, it happens when you enter into a community, when you interact with people, whether it's at churches, temples, on your job, and certain persons invariably in that environment do stuff to you, and you can't find any present local cause for their behavior. But you're only looking at what you did 2 months ago.
Yes, yes.
You got to be able to have access to all of your action. And then when you see, it's a beautiful story that the saints tell about one such person who was on the path and they were blind. Now, ordinarily, mystics won't even initiate a blind person because that's a sign that the karma is so bad, you see. But in some case, this particular guy had such redeeming qualities other than that, such devotion that he was initiated and made progress, incidentally. And in spite of his inner progress, he could not locate the etiology, the karma, that was responsible for his present birth being born blind. Being born blind, he could only go halfway to the journey. You see, he had to stop at Dachshundar. He could not go all the way back. Halfway was as far as you can go, you see, under those conditions. And he looked and his, and he could not find it. So Edisabi approached his guru, you see, and because this was weighing on him. Why had his progress stopped at Dachshundar, midway back? And he mentioned to the guru that he had been, reviewing all of the Akash records. You see, he couldn't see anything. You see, he was able to raise his consciousness. Because if you can raise your consciousness from the waking state, or what we call the Atinkaringat, if you can get higher than the waking state, just a little higher than the waking state, you can start picking up your Akash, your records. You start seeing your behavior. Like when you die and you pass out of the waking condition for a while, for permanent, and you go through the upper level, at some point you see your whole life. You see everything. You follow me? Now some people only go so high that you just see from this lifetime. That's enough to scare the hell out of you. See my point? But if you go higher still, not only would you see from the previous life, but the life before that, the life before that. Well, he had access to those levels that were higher than the ordinary level. Obviously, he had went midway, not just here. In any case that he saw, he couldn't see anything, and he scrutinized all of the lifetime that he could see. But he had no power to see beyond that limit. So the guru, by grace, you see, moved him further and took them together, lifetime after lifetime. And in the 101st lifetime, prior to his present lifetime, as a little boy playing out in the yard, he took a straw and plucked out the eye of a grasshopper. Here, 101 lifetimes later, he had to be born blind. It is a profound matter. You see my point? So when that person on the job does something to you that you feel, you don't know, go back a few lifetimes and you may, suddenly stop resenting that person and stop feeling so victimized and indignant about their behavior. You'll realize what you did. You see my point? So these thoughts, every thought that you have is recorded. You see, some of them you re-experience in your dream. That's all you're doing is re-experiencing thoughts that we picked up in this waking state. So there's much to say about all of that, beloved. Hopefully you'll be around long enough, and maybe you'll be able to get into one of the cooler groups, and that's where we do this kind of thing, because it has to be approached systematically. Aladasa, something to say, beloved, and I'll give you the last word.
Okay, since I know that I'm down on the Pinda realm,
How do you know that?
because I know I'm suffering with all these perversions.
All right.
And what Viveka was saying about how, and you were saying how these things come up, but the way that we can control them, or way that I can control them, is by what you gave us on a sheet and what I'm supposed to be saying about cultivating the Dion.
Yes, yes.
And that will take us to interrupting
some of this,
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
the Satpurush stuff that we already have so deeply.
Not interrupt the Satpurush stuff, interrupt the Causality.
The Causality, I'm sorry, the Causality that we have.
Spoken like a true right disciple of God. Trying to blame the Lord for his
But the Causality
Yes.
that I have so deeply ingrained in me,
Yes.
that if I start pulling up this love and my heart become really tender and broken, that I can, you know, see.
Yeah. Yes. It must be that desire, that yearning. I mean, there's so many ways I could respond to it, your inquiry, because it's such a profound inquiry. Of course, it'll never be able to be done justice to it. It's outside of the pool of process, and I'm taking you all through some of that as we speak. But certainly, beloved, there must always be this yearning for the Lord. I mean, think about it. How could you be content with the mere belief that there's a God? Don't something in your heart yearns to meet this God?
Yes.
Is there anything in you that yearns for the darshan and the dhyan of this God? I believe in a God. Why wouldn't I want to see it, hear it, speak with it, merge with it, have his vision? Well, you see, in a true devotee, there's always that yearning, that berah, that intense longing, never content with the theory about the existence of God or the mere belief that a God exists. If that is so, then the devotee wants to experience that. Meditation is about having the experience of God. No longer content with the theology of God. You want God. You see? Not a theology about God, not a dogma about God, not a doctrine about God. You must have the actual experience of God. You want to see the Lord. You follow what I'm saying? When this yearning is there now, right? See, already that yearning begins to counteract the centrifugal direction of your attention out in the world automatically, right? You see? Some love has been developed. So dhyan then, and I won't get too technical because for those who are really not practitioners of our way, won't be able to appreciate my response, and I don't wish to bore them with some unnecessary language up here. But in your case, if there's no love for the Lord or the Guru, you can't do any dhyan. Therefore, you can't interrupt your mind and attention. You can't do that mechanically. It's not a matter of connecting dots. It's not like that. You see? If you have no real, genuine love and affection for the Guru, there is no way in the world you can hold the Guru image. You follow what I'm saying? You can't do it. And not being able to give your attention to something higher than the pull in the present, you have no option. You will follow the pull of your mind. You will want to try to do dhyan, but you're trying to do it mechanically. You're trying to use some kind of technology. You're trying to do everything except cultivate the love for the Guru and God that is dhyan requires of you. You follow what I'm saying, beloved? So we sit in the company of the Guru, just in the physical company of the Guru. We can't even pay attention to the physical form of the Guru. How would you pay attention to the ethereal, subtle form of the Guru? You can't even keep your attention on the outer form. You follow what I'm saying? There must be this yearning, this love. That's the most important thing, rather than some kind of technical, you know what I mean? Execution, mechanical, you know what I mean? If I turn my head like this, I can get better. If I do it upside down, standing on my head, I can see. You know what I mean? If I only eat 2 meals a week, I can have a darshan. No. If I read a big book or read some, no. It doesn't work like that. You can't meet God on the inside if you really don't have a strong desire to meet God on the inside. You can't meet him through tricks. You follow me? there must be this yearning. You believe a God exists? Do you want to see that God? For real, yearning. That, and not casual yearning, not just on Sunday mornings you have a yearning to meet God. You see, it can't be that Sunday go to meeting kind of stuff. But it must be that yearning like that of a fish for water. You know what I mean? The chakor for the moonlight, you know? The papilla for raindrops. You know all those examples that the mystic use. It must be a real yearning, uninterrupted. Unconsolable is the best word for it. Can't be consoled by nothing. You know, you had children, remember when them girls were little, before they got on your last nerve and all that? There was a time, once upon a time, when them girls really wanted to be with you. You follow what I'm saying? And you take them and drop them somewhere, and you go out the room, and they just fall out, right? And could not be consoled. You know, grandma tried to give them a toy, put a bottle in my mouth, they want their mama, right? Only mama do. That's how I gotta get. Only God and nothing else will console you. You must become unconsolable, right? Then it can happen. See, many are called, given the opportunity. Very few people choose to take full advantage of it. And for that you must love. That's why they said this is the path of love. It is not a path of knowledge. I think you found that out, didn't you, Eddie Saab, the hard way? It's not a path of knowledge. It's not a path of accumulating more and more information, and once that information reaches a certain crescendo, then voila. You know what I mean? You will somehow, by the weight of information, be transformed. You're not going to be transformed by the weight of no information. This is love. It's a matter of the heart. You got to love. It is a path of love. For real. Love of God. No fooling. No kidding. Not love of doctrine, not love of dogma, not love of theology, love of God. Right? And you must become unconsolable like that child. Longing for his mother. That's why the love of that goes on between a mother and her son or daughter, that's the highest level of love in this world, at this Pinda realm. That's it. That's the top. All right? Everything else descends from there. Love between husband and wife, blah, blah, blah. All descend downward from there. It's that point. Because a mother suffers it too, right? I mean, you can go out, right? After that first baby, I remember when Joyce, we had our firstborn, you know, and she get a little shape back and all that. You know, the men ready to take her out because this, you know, this been a long time. Right? You ready to, you know, get back to routine. And you start with a dinner and you go out, you're dating again and all that stuff. You women know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You've been a victim enough of bias. But in any case, I remember we went out, finally got mama able to keep the baby, you know what I mean? Get dressed up. We go outside, right? And we going out and, you know, we free, right? So we're having a good time. But after a couple hours ago, she kept calling, how's Emmy? How's Emmy? I said, don't worry, she all right, come on, you know. 10 minutes, how's Emmy? And after a while, she just got up early. Let's go. I gotta go. That's that pull. That's that pull in that woman's heart. When she look at her baby, her milk start flowing to her breast. Just start flowing. Y'all know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yes. When you just look over it and the breast just fill up. That's what I'm talking about. That's what's got it. That's where you gotta go. Right? That's where you gotta go. You see? You got to want to see your beloved. Just like that. Got, not just want to, got to see your beloved. I stand corrected. Not that it would be nice. You see my point? No. Got to see the beloved. And when you become all consumed with that, then you can travel a spiritual path. Until then, religion is good enough for you. Just practice religion. Because that you can do by simply subscribing to a set of belief, dogmas, and doctrine. A few rituals, a few ceremony. You see? That will appease you. If that don't work, study philosophy. That way you can just stay in your head, building castles. And you'll feel satisfied. You'll read a nice commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, it'll say a little esoteric shit, and you start feeling good. When you put that book down and say, man, that was good. Or pop in a Bhagwan tape, you listen to it. You relieved, you satisfied. Now you don't need to see God, you heard a Bhagwan tape. So, you all understand what I'm saying? You must become unconsolable. Unconsolable. You see? Nothing less than that will do. So this is a little bit about what kind of hard it takes to really pull your attention. Because even if you try to pull your attention off that desire that is rising in the moment, that negative desire that is going to prompt you to resort to a negative behavior, and you catch it and you're trying to pull your attention out of it by placing it on the sadhup and inner form of the guru. But if you don't love the guru, how would you hold your attention there? So where will your attention go? You can't hold your attention there. You can give it a minute and then you're right back. Because there's not enough love. You don't love the guru enough for your attention to stick. Now that's not flattering. Because you're walking around deluded, thinking that, oh, I love my guru. I mean, Dion shows you where your love is at. If you ever have any doubt about it, you can measure it right there. You don't ever have trouble giving your attention to someone you love. In fact, it's just the opposite. You had difficulty taking your attention off them. So if you're having difficulty putting it on, rest my case. You know, work on some yearning. Cultivate some yearning. Satsang. And try to keep the company of those who feel with yearning, because guess what? If you do that, some yearning will arise in you. You see? Don't try to read more books to get your yearning going. Get closer, find somebody that got some yearning and try to keep their company. Move in with them. Get in their cooler group or something, move next door. Try to get as much time in the company of that person that you feel has yearning, or at least have more yearning than you. That's how you do it. You don't get it by reading more books or indulging in more discussions. You keep company. You find a gurumukh. Keep that company. Or someone that's the closest thing to a gurumukh that you can get your hands on. And keep that company. And automatically you will be invaded at the level of your heart and mind with this sincere love for the Supreme Being. Asdamo Sanitana. Prepare for prashad. Those who have a minute, I guess, you're most welcome to stop by and say hello to me and whatever else you might have wanted to explore, but we did not have time to do so. So most of you know Satrani. She'll make herself known when you see her afterwards. Mandinka culture and society, there is a rite of passage that both the young boys and the young girls go through. And in the old days, that rite of passage would last for about a year. They would go out into the bush. The boys, along with their male mentor, and the girls, along with their female mentor. And for a year, they would live in the bush. And there they would take care of one another, feed one another. There they would learn all of the secret wisdom that had come down to the Mandinka people since the beginning of Mandinka time. They would learn the songs of wisdom to sing, and learn the stories containing the wisdom to tell. And after that year, when they emerged from their respective places in the bush, you see, the relationship that they develop in the bush lasts the rest of their life. When they re-enter into the larger community, they re-enter as this unit. They call that unit kafu. It's the brotherhood of those who you went through your initiation. And it's the strongest social unit in the society. Stronger than family. You follow me? It's like a kula, a sangha. And it will last for their whole entire lifetime. That's something like what a sangha is. You see? Looking around the room at one another, these are the people who have gone through a rite of passage into a higher state of consciousness. And the bond should be tight, like that of the boys and girls who go through kafu. It should survive a lifetime and be the strongest human relationship that you will ever have. That is why Jesus and all mystics say the sign of a real kafu, the sign of a satsang and sangha, is that ye have love for one another. No fool.